Hi, this is Brian Gibbons. I want to welcome Rob from Massachusetts. Rob, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. We're going to talk a little bit about terms deals and how can we, especially with expired listings, how can we help somebody learn how to get into the house? How can we learn how to talk to the seller and get a letter of intent done? That's our big thing on this talk right today. Rob, tell me a little bit about your opinion of the negotiation training. I know you've only been through it once or twice. What's your opinion of that? You have any?
I think it's really good. It's got a ton of information in it. I've gone through it now, I think 3 times. I'm really just trying to digest everything because it's chock full. But I think it's made me really kind of step back and look at negotiation differently than I had been in the past. And it's certainly more strategic than what I'm used to.
Can you give me an example of any aha moments that came to you by learning some of these techniques that's different than what you were trained with before?
Well, yes. So going through the options and kind of eliminating them from the list, I had certainly been taught that a little bit, but I think going through, exhaustively as you did in the training is a little bit more, like spending a lot of time on that area to really get the seller motivated and kind of crystallize in the seller's mind what the problems are with getting the house sold, and as far as using an agent again, or using an agent or renting, etc. Also, the 3 R's: the range technique, the realistic, and the real estate agent. And the range technique, especially, I think that I've never used that. So it seems like sellers may get a little, I don't know.
Well, they might get a little pissed off that you're not hearing them, and you got to be very subtle.
Right, exactly.
But if you do it very subtly, it's just, 340 to 350. Oh, okay. All right. I get you. Got to get where you're at, and then just, if they're really adamant about their number, they'll tell you. But at least you give it a shot, right? You're feeling them out. You're not really being aggressive with it at all. You see, one of the biggest things in that negotiation training is the Peter Falk Columbo kind of thing, where you already kind of know their feeling of, let's say, listing it with another agent. They hate agents. You can tell with their body language that they hate agents, and but you got to get them to say it, right? You're almost like you're getting them to say what you already know is true. And here's one thing I want you to remember on this talk that we have here, and just remember this is very important. If they say it, they mean it, and they believe it.
Okay.
And if you say it, they doubt it. So you notice that in the training, it's got a lot to do, NLP has a lot to do with getting them to bring to their awareness what they already know, but you're kind of making it more concrete and more solid, And when people say things out loud to somebody that's a real estate professional, they have some conviction with it. They're not just saying it to say it. They're saying it because they believe it. But you got to get them to say it, and that's what that technique's all about. And that way you can really take it off the list as an option. Okay, so let's get into you're an agent and an attorney in Massachusetts, and you've got the ability to get through the MLS, and you're going to get a list of expired listings. Now, I wish there was an easy, fast way to get these people to give you a call saying, what can you do to help me? I would love that to happen. But it's been my experience that the best way to get somebody that just had an expired listing, this week, that fresh, right? The best way is knocking on their door, if you can get that done. And a lot of people don't like that. Okay. A lot of people go, well, can I just call them? Can I just mail something to them or whatever? and it's like, that would be great, but the expired listing is like, Well, first of all, let's talk about how important it is to get a fresh listing versus an old listing.
Yep.
As a broker, that one of the best ways to start a new person out is to go after expireds and FSBOs, right? That's the best way to get them started. And that's what a lot of brokers do with their new agents. So within 72 hours of that listing going expired, it's like a piranha fish. It's like everybody's jumping on that poor seller, with mail, with phone, with all sorts of things. And they're trying to do it time effectively without, getting in their car and knocking on their door. Well, I think to differentiate yourself, you knock on their door. Now, I wanted you to have on a recording what I would say when I knock on the door. First of all, I look like a banker, okay? And I know realtors don't really dress up that much, it's just they don't. They have a very casual appearance. And I think if you're prospecting, you need to look good. You really do. And I know it costs money and time to get in a suit and a tie and look good, but I think you should look like a banker. And if you do that, people give you more respect. They think, oh, he cares about his appearance, he cares about what he portrays, and that kind of thing. Second of all, you knock on their door and you act like a buyer. You don't act like an agent, you don't act like a real estate investor, but you act like a buyer, a home buyer. And, I just knock on the door and I scratch my head like Columbo, and I go, was this house for sale just recently? Was there a for sale sign out here? I could have sworn, I'm sorry to bother you, but were you trying to sell this house? Now, what do you think this home seller is thinking if you say that to them? Does that sound like a salesman?
No, it just seems like somebody who may be interested in buying it and thought it was for sale and now doesn't see a sign.
Yeah. But it sounds like a sincere person trying to find out whether or not the house is for sale or not, And that's the impression you want to give. That's the first thing. And let's say that they look and they're playing their cards to the vest, and a lot of folks in Boston do that, They're not real forthwith about their information, and, they go, whoa, we had it with an agent, or something like that, they might say. And I said, oh, well, fantastic. I'll just ask you this one last question and leave you alone. Would you consider selling the house privately without an agent? And if they say yes to that, then you try to get a time when both parties will be in the house to walk through the house. And just try to get that person's name and their cell number, and that's it. No other information. Could I get your cell so I could set a time that both you and your wife could be present and I could walk through the house? Maybe we can get something written down on paper. That's my favorite thing to say. Now, that's about as non-threatening as you can get. And you act like a cash buyer.
Absolutely.
And then try to get their cell number, and don't give them your cell number. You want to be able to, you don't want them calling and hearing your agent information on your cell,
Sure.
The ideal thing is to just set a time when both parties are present. Now, when I'm on the phone, I try to call her and I try to say, look, I'm really excited about walking through your house and doing it quickly. What's the best time we can both, I could walk through the house with you and your husband present, and try to set a time during the daylight. That's important. If it's dark, you can't see the outside, it's not a good time to walk through a house. Second of all, make sure that, they have, I like to have them have the folder when they bought the house on the table. If it's available. So as you remember when you bought the house, you have some mortgage papers and the sale and purchase agreement and stuff. There's a legal description on that. Would you mind very much if I looked at that paper? Because if I write an offer that night, I need to see the legal description. Would you mind getting that folder available? That's not a big thing to ask somebody to do if they're going to sell privately. you know. And then I usually walk through the house and I ask them questions that a buyer would ask. You give me about 3 or 4 questions that a buyer would ask about the house outside the price.
When was the last time the roof was done?
Yep. There you go. How old is the roof?
Had any water damage or anything?
Yeah, I would be cautious about the water damage question. I would say, when's the last time? Has the roof been replaced lately? How's the heating? You know,
Yeah.
If you replace the boiler or the heating apparatus down in the basement? You know, do you have electric? What kind of heat do you have? What's your average heat bill? You know, it's more like what does it cost to run the house is basically what you want to ask those kinds of questions. Have the windows been replaced? Are they double pane? You know, stuff like that. You know, those are non-threatening questions, and they sound like buyer questions, and they sound like somebody that's sincere about buying the house. And they don't need to be more than 4 or 5 of them. And you could have an inspection sheet, you know, or just a yellow pad. You want to look like somebody interested in buying the house, but he's not too professional. He's not like an agent, not like a property manager, not like somebody that's in the business. Okay, so once we walk through the house, you know, it's like I generally try to do some rapport building as I'm walking through the house. Now, there's pictures and I don't know, things that you can comment on. So if you see pictures of children, it says, oh, those are your kids, you know, where do they go to school? And then try to find some commonality with what they have. And I talk a little bit about that in the training. Occupation, you know, what do they do? How long they've been doing it? You know, where they go to school for that? You know, stuff like that builds commonality and builds likability pretty quick. You know, you can do that in 10 minutes. I always think about what questions can you ask a man if you're in an airplane and you're stuck and you can't get out of that seat and you got to talk to that person, you know. Well, guys like to talk about sports and their jobs. You know, those are real easy questions. And whoever's given you the walkthrough, if it's a woman, you know, you ask about their kids and where they go to school and stuff like that. And those are all safe questions to build commonality. And then, so you walk through the house and then you do kind of do the upfront agreement just before you sit down. So what I propose is that we sit down at the kitchen table and talk a little bit about perhaps, you know, what you want to do and money and a few other things. But I would like to just frame it this way. You know, if you're 100% happy with, you know, what I have to say and what my solution might be, then we can get something on paper tonight. So we don't have to keep going back and forth because that drives me crazy and it's not a very effective use of your time. And conversely, you know, if I'm 100% happy with what we talk about and I can be secure about that, then I'll put something to paper and I'll be happy to do that as a good faith. But, you know, what you don't want to do is just keep coming back because I'm pretty happy with what I've seen so far. Does that sound like a good way to do business? Do you think that if we're both happy, we can move forward and get something on some kind of an agreement? And usually they say yes to that. That's not a hard thing to ask. That's like a sincerity test. And if they say something like, well, I might have to shoot it by my lawyer or whatever, that kind of thing. Now at least you know what you're dealing with. You at least know what you're dealing with. It's kind of like a sincerity test I kind of do before I even start the negotiation. And then I just sit down at the kitchen table and I kind of go through this step 3, right? The third step. And the third step is going through, kicking out all their options. And I won't go through all of those. But the most important thing is that you throw out a question where you already know the answer. And then you go, oh, I see. That's how you feel about that. You know? And one of the things I like the best is like the last one. How long would you like to this thing handled? Would you want to get it done in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months? I mean, what's the time frame you'd like to see this thing handled? And usually they say, I'd like it done next week. They don't want to have another 6 months on a listing like they had before. You want to comment on that?
Sure.
That how long you want to have it handled? Do you see what it does to the conversation?
Oh yeah, it makes that. I mean, you're going to find out right away what their motivation is, especially if you're saying 6 months, 12 months, and they're saying, no, I want this done, yesterday. You get a really good sense of how motivated they are at that point.
Right, or at least how urgent they are. I think the word motivated is kind of pushed a lot. We need that motivated seller, but it's just you want to know their time frame. And you want them to tell you, you want it done quickly. What needs to be done after the house is sold? And try to ask them, why do they need it done quickly? That kind of thing. And I always try to be very courteous to them when they answer these questions. It's, thank you for informing me of that. I had no idea. I've got a video on negotiation about negotiation sentences of responses that you can have to these questions, like what Columbo would say, that kind of thing. And says, I have no idea. And you know full well the answer. You knew the answer to the question, but you're acting like this is new information. Okay. And that's the most important thing. So the third step's pretty important. You kick out the legs of the stool, listing it with another agent, using a property manager, renting it out by owner, selling it by owner, all those other choices. And then, if there's equity there, then you go through the fourth step. And I won't go through that because it's a little bit involved, but you already said something about the range technique and the other techniques that are there. And the fifth step, I think, is a really critical step that you should be spending some time practicing. It's really not that hard, but the two pieces of it is you've got to be a reluctant buyer on that. Mm-hmm. And second of all, you need to use appeal to a higher authority with it. Now, appeal to a higher authority is your business partner. So what I'm going to do is put on tape what a common what-if step would be. So let's say I went through everything. Let's say that the house was worth $600,000. Let's say they owe $580, right? And the cost to sell was 10% or $60,000. So let's use that as an example because that's about your market where you're at. So I would say something like this. Well, Bob and Susan, we've been through a lot today. We've talked about a lot of your options. We talked about selling it privately. We talked about selling it with another agent, and those two issues you didn't want to do. Talked about renting it out. You didn't want to do that. So I have a possible solution for you, and I wanted to get your feelings on it. But let me just give you a hypothetical. What if we could get a way to get your PITI, which you told me was about $2,300 a month, and we got that paid for about 24 to 36 months. And at the end of that period of time, your balance would be paid off in full. You owe about $580, and that $580 would be paid off in full. And it would take about 24 to 36 months for that to happen. Would that be something that you would even think of considering? And to tell you the truth, I'd have to check it by my business partner. I don't know if I can do it, but if I could get that done, would that be something worthwhile putting to pen to paper as a possible solution for your house? And what that does, that's it. That's the end of it. What that does is it says, I don't know if I can do this. I got to check it over with my business partner, but we make that payment every month and then pay off the balance, whatever it was. That is a subject to offer. Okay. That is a wraparound mortgage offer, and that's a lease to own offer. Those are three ways to sell on terms. And we haven't gone through any definitions yet, right? We just got the broad strokes as far as what's in it for them. And that, I think, is a very critical step, And you could put that in a letter of intent too, where,
Okay.
we would pay for 36 months, PITI payment approximation of $2,300. And then at the end of that term, we would pay off the existing loan of approximate balance of 580. That's it in a very simple letter of intent, right? There's not real complicated. It's you either want to do that or you don't. And then I would go into the different ways of doing that. Like the subject to would be taking over the payments, but they keep the loan in their name. The wraparound mortgage would be we'd buy the house on a wraparound mortgage, or the other one would be a lease to own, where we would enter into a lease and an option and then sell that paperwork for a fee. Any questions on that part of it, on the letter of intent part of it?
No, it seems very general. Just doesn't have to be like a real contract language at that point. It's just kind of like this is what we intend to do. Yeah.
Right. And what's lovely about doing it this way is you don't have to get them to, a lot of people, if you put together this paperwork in front of them at the time of the presentation, they get confused, and a confused mind says no all the time. And they have to go get an attorney, But if you just got those general terms down and that's what they would receive as benefits, then you can take that letter of intent and bring it down to an attorney's office and finish off the paperwork and explain how that's going to work, those particular solutions.
Right.
And what's nice about that what if step and filling out the letter of intent, it's only about 10 minutes. You more or less, you can get out of there pretty soon after that. The third step is the longest step. The upfront agreement doesn't take that long. Building rapport takes about 15 minutes. I've been in and out of houses generally in under an hour. If you can do 10 letter of intents, Rob, every week, there's no reason why you can't do a deal a week. There's just no reason. And I have had people call me 3 months after I give them the letter of intent. And they go,
really?
Okay, we're ready. It's almost like a meeting of the minds in contract law. You're getting to the basics, but it's not a contract. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. I mean, it's basically a term sheet. You're saying this is what we discussed. This is what you said you would like to do, and I'm with it as well. And, we go from there and make it a legal instrument.
Okay. And that's the most unintimidating conversation you could have with a home seller, as far as the terms do. I can't make it any softer than that. Now, I think I know you want to get results quickly, and you've hired me to get you results, but I think it would be worth your time to study this recording that we just created today. And I'll send that to you within a couple of hours' time. But if you can review this a couple of times and then try to maybe listen to that recording one more time, I think you would be in good shape. Okay. What do you think? How do you feel?
Great.
Do you think that's a good prescription of doing it?
I'm trying to not spend too much time studying and not actually implementing things, but I also know that I do definitely need to get a grasp of all the information. So that seems like a reasonable approach, definitely.
Yeah, it's kind of like a drill for skill. I remember when I was an estate planning financial planner with the Guardian and with New York Life, and our managers made us get good at this stuff, get good at the conversation with the prospect before we even were allowed to talk to the public. And that's my approach. And it's not to be perfect, but it is to be good. It is to be pretty good at the basics. Okay. So I appreciate your patience. I know it's hard. and you want to make some money next week, we all would like to do that. But I think you'll be
Sure,
well
of course.
served to do this. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
well, I'm all in, so.
Do you have any questions right now you can think of about this particular matter?
At what point? Yeah. So at what point do okay, so you knock on the door and you set the appointment and you come back. At what point do you kind of just cut bait and say, this is just not going to work? Is it just, when you come back and say, is that a fit for you, basically? I mean, do you try a bunch of different things if it's not a fit initially for the seller, or how does that typically go?
Well, this is my opinion is this. This is, well, you tried with an agent and it hasn't worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And the house is in good shape. And the price of the house, I think, is reasonable. So, your choices are either to sell on terms and get your price, or discount your cash price by a good 10%. And
Okay.
there's not enough equity in there to do that, to discount the house by
Yeah.
$60,000. So I think this is your best bet, based on my years of experience in real estate. This is a way for you to basically get this mortgage out of your name and to be able to net the most amount of money and have the buyer pay most of the closing costs. The buyer in these terms deals are very excited about getting into a beautiful house like this one, and to be able to build their credit up over time so that they can get a mortgage. And to pay your price they don't mind paying retail. So this is your best bet.
Right.
And that's how I kind of reassure them that they're on the right track.
Okay.
And that's a good question.
Yeah.
You want to be well armed for every possible retort that the seller gives you. But, a lot of times, I just say, well, why don't I just draft a letter of intent? You hang on to it. And then when you're ready, you give me a call. If you can get a cash price that'll pay off your mortgage in full within the next month, please get that done. And this will be your plan B.
Gotcha.
Because that's how I'd want somebody to talk to me. That is their best choice, is to get somebody to pay off their mortgage. This is a plan B in case that
sure.
doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with this plan B. This is a good plan B. It's not like a terrible plan B. This is a plan A, is get somebody to pay off that mortgage in full and take the house off your hands. Plan B is to turn it into an investment property and to get the tax benefits and do that plan. So this is a good solid plan for you. Okay.
Okay.
There are a few other pieces of the puzzle. This is broad strokes. Like if we do lease to owns, I really like to get a property inspection paid for by the seller so that the buyer knows that they're getting into a good house and, there's nothing particularly wrong with it. Just like a buyer that's paying cash for a house, there's nothing materially wrong with it. Other than that, as far as how fit the house is, that's about it. We use a third-party payee service that basically takes the payment from the buyer and pays directly the bank and the taxes and the insurance impound account, so that we don't have to depend on the seller to do that, because that hurts the buyer's ability to, what if they take the money and don't pay the mortgage? We want to protect the buyer for that.
Right.
But there's those kinds of details. We'll get into it as we do the deals. I just want you to get a deal signed up, and not get overwhelmed by other details. Anything else?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
What's that?
No, that was my next question. Should I, be trying to get a better handle on the the subject to and the wrap mortgage and that kind of stuff at this point? But you answered that, so.
Yeah, I think once we get a deal, it's pretty quick, and because I would like you to have an attorney that acts for you, even though you are an attorney. It just protects you from lawsuits. That you have a superior amount of knowledge and training, and when you're buying as a principal, a court of law could say, well, you're an expert in this situation, and they aren't, and that kind of thing. So if you had an attorney act for you that basically says you understand that, in subject to, there's a due on sale clause, and they could call the loan due. You understand that, blah, 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 blah. We have all the paperwork that says that, but I would rather have an attorney that acts for you, and that just protects you. Protects you and
absolutely.
You're right with having your own attorney for these deals?
Not at all. No. I think that's a good idea for all the reasons that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, should I be buying, if I'm actually going to be doing, purchases, that kind of stuff through an LLC or anything like that? Is that necessary or not really?
If you want to buy and hold through an LLC?
Just
or
whatever.
Just buy and resell through an LLC?
Yeah, any of the stuff. If I'm going to be a principal, does it make sense to buy with an LLC or just my own name?
My opinion is that you always buy through an LLC. All your paperwork is as a managing member of an LLC. That's what I would do.
Right.
So if you don't, do you have an LLC to work through? Or
I do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I have an LLC.
So we'll put all the paperwork through as a managing member of your LLC. Okay.
Okay, great.
Anything else you can think of?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Like I said, still trying to digest the negotiating.
I know. It just takes some experience, and if you just hit the major buttons, on all of them, and then revisited the training, you'll see what you miss.
Yeah.
And I would.
Okay.
I think you're pretty close to being able to talk to sellers already. You're a very sharp guy. You want to get it on a good level, not an excellent level right now. And the excellent level will come by the number of times you're in front of people. It's almost like closing arguments in court. You never get them perfect in the beginning, right? You watch other people. You do your best. You have a strategy. You try that strategy, and you're pretty rough about it, and you say, well, that needs some work. But the jury doesn't know it needs some work, right? That's a good analogy, I think, to what we're talking about. They don't know how bad you're doing it, as far as you're just being hard on yourself, as far as trying to emulate a certain standard, right? But you'll get there.
Yeah.
I promise you'll get there.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And I think if you listen to this recording, that'll help remember it. I think what helps my new students, my brand new students, never done any of these, and they do their first 3 or so, is just put this on an index card. At the door, say these 3 bullet points. Ask those questions.
Oh, I see.
And then on the presentation, just remember you go through the rapport, the upfront agreement. Before you sit down, you go through step 3. There's about 5 things in that step you got to go through. If there's equity in the money step, there's about 5 things you got to remember there. And then the upfront agreement, the what if step, just getting that reluctant buyer and the appeal to higher authority with a business partner in there is important. If you just did that, you'd be great. It sounds like a lot, right? But the more we talk about it, the more it makes sense, right? And that's what the
training is for. It's less scary now than after I've been through it a few times. So
well,
definitely getting more comfortable with it.
Well, what we're going to do on the next tape, and we can do it in the next. I want to give you at least 3 or 4 days with this recording, but then we'll do it, and you do what I just said. I'll just turn the tables, and I'll be the seller, and I'll try to interrupt you and get you off track a little bit, and get that on tape, and I think that'll help you a lot too. And
yeah, that makes sense, definitely.
And I'll be easygoing seller, but I'll be a little bit interrupting you and see if you can get back on track, that kind of thing. That
Okay.
sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. If there's any questions between now and the next 3 days or so, just text me, but set a time like next Friday or Monday, and give yourself about 3 or
Okay.
4 days with this recording. Okay?
All right, I will.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Rob. I appreciate it. I enjoyed this one.
You too. I did too. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.